right, hopefully you can see my screen. We're looking at the analog accessory module. So this is now a fully released item. It's available for the C3. And if you're looking at the screen here, you can see the large, this is the full size accessory. So it takes up the width, the full width of the C3. And then next to it, I have a 485 accessory. So there's a number of these smaller accessories that plug into the back of the C320 and the C350 as well. So just to get an idea there, the analog output card, it does have a LED on it, so it tells you if you're in current or in voltage mode. And you can see here for my demonstration, I'm set up for current. So if you have a C350, if you've received one during the beta launch, or if you have one now, in order to run the analog output card shown here, you'll need to have, at the minimum, you'll need to have K306 firmware. You need to have version 1.1.2 firmware. And then, of course, the accessory itself, which is, the part number is M6401. And on my demonstration, I'm just using a C350. So the C350 has a number of cable glands, and I'm just wired in through the cable gland with a 2-wire connection. The analog output card is active. So if you're taking mental notes, keep that in mind. It's an active device. I think the gone are the years of the passive type analog outputs. On our website, if you do have an older unit and you wanted to add this card onto it, on the website we have a link that tells you how to upgrade your firmware, and as well as the firmware file. They're both here, and I can share these in the chat so that you can get these if you need them. Put that into the chat. All right. So these accessory cards, all of them are installed via small plastite metal screws that thread into the studs here. I didn't put a bunch of screws into my indicator. I just set the one in there to hold the card. And this one's actually just pushed in. There's a comb of pins that push into the blue connector behind it. So I'll get into the live part here. Let me turn this off. So what I'm using here is I have the smaller indicator, the C320. That's set up as my meter, basically. And to do that, I'm using a analog input accessory on the back of my C320. So that's being used in conjunction with the analog output accessory on the back of the C350. Normally for this, if you're out in the field or if you're setting this up on your bench, you would just use a regular voltmeter and set it in milliamps. So I'm going to show you guys how to adjust the analog output if you are trying to fine tune it or calibrate your analog output. So I'm going to slide over here. So we're going to go in full setup. And then we're going to navigate to the analog menu. There we'll hit tare, height, setting, source, ABS, clip, range, and then cal. So in cal, We're going to hit select to move into that. And then first we'll adjust the low. So the way this works is you just use the up and down arrow. So I need to go up a little bit. So you can see I'm at 4. Hit OK. And then hit select to go to adjust high. Hit OK. So now you're at the high, the 20 milliamp, and you can see I'm a little over. So I'm going to bring that down. Hit OK. And then you can just hold the outer keys, save and exit. So I've already got my indicator calibrated to my simulator, and it's set for 10,000 pounds. So 10,000 pounds is 20 milliamps, and then 0 is 4. So hopefully that all made sense. The only difference is I'm not using a digital voltmeter. That's the only difference. All right. I'm going to kick back to sharing my screen. So this accessory is pretty much just like any of the other analog output accessories that are available for the 400 series or the 500 series. Taking a look at the manual here, we can see this is the descriptions of the setup menu. You have the type, which is the analog output type. Is it analog, current, or voltage? And then the source, the default is gross. You can change that to net or a toggle. Absolute setting, that has to do with positive and negative values. So if you're measuring weight behind 0, you may want to turn absolute on if you're doing negative weighing, but the default is off or no. And then clipping is turned off. That's the default setting, but in some applications, you may want to turn clipping on. What that does is it sets hard and fast limits on your high and low outputs, your high and low analog. And then this setting is also an interesting one. This has to do with your range. So your scale range may be different than your analog range. You may have a 0 to 10,000 pound calibrated instrument, but your analog range could be less than that. It could be inside of that. So you might say 0 to 10,000 is what the indicator shows, but my analog output's going to operate on 1,000 to 8,000. So that's where you can set a custom range and tell the instrument what your analog output range is. And then if you do that, once you select custom, then you have to define your low and your high weight values. And then, of course, the analog calibration is done in here. My card, when I plugged it in, it was actually really close. It was within 0.001 on the low and the high. So for the demonstration, I just adjusted it out of range to demonstrate how to set it high and low. But typically on anything like this, you're going to probably want to at least check it with your meter before you send it downstream to the customer. Just make sure it's lined up.
And then one item that I neglected to mention is the adjust low and the adjust high setting can only be done from the front panel. They cannot be adjusted using the viewer.
And then, of course, we have the output test. So this is like a force out mode where you can just force the outputs on to verify that it's working and to see the customer's equipment change if the customer's equipment's not working, the PLC or something else.